Welcome to Two Angry Men, the newest podcast with Los Angeles Magazine's own Mark Garrigus and TMZ's Harvey Levin, where the two get together and talk about the biggest legal stories of the day. Enjoy.
I have the opportunity to go to the White House and talk to the president and not give up my principles. It seems like nobody noticed that. I didn't go MAGA. I had the opportunity to talk to Donald Trump and say things to him that maybe he never hears. Literally to speak truth to power.
Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast. I'm Harvey Levin.
I'm Mark Garrigus, and I'm only angry today at Harvey, who's now going to throw a Yiddish proverb at me.
I will. It's Mani Shana Halayla Hazeh, which means, why is this night different from all the rest? Let's get to it. I'm so excited. Bill Maher is on with us today. Full disclosure, Bill is a really dear friend of mine, and I think also one of the smartest people in this business. So, Bill, welcome to our podcast. We're so happy you're here.
Well, bromance right back to you.
Okay, let's
Getting to know you has been one of the pleasures of this last decade. If you think there aren't good things ahead, kids, when you get into your 60s, you might meet and get to be friends with Harvey Levin. That's what happened to me.
Or later than 60s in my case.
I was going to say, or as you're nearing your actuarial overreach.
Right. Okay, let's get into it. So, look, I want to say, I am very like-minded when I hear Bill that, you know, so many of the things he says resonates with me. One of the things I like the most is that we can disagree and it doesn't become acrimonious. And I think we're at that point with something big that happened over the last couple of weeks when Bill had dinner with Donald Trump. And Bill, you laid it out on your show the way that you saw it. And, you know, one of the things that really struck me that you said was, a crazy person doesn't live in the White House. A person who plays a crazy person on TV a lot lives there. And that really set off a whole tirade online, you know, in various media outlets. I'm just going to give you one. Josh Rogan, who is a Washington Post columnist, said this. I think
he was on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He
Yeah.
was on the show.
He was on the panel.
He was on the panel
with who else, Bill?
with Piers Morgan.
Yeah, right, exactly.
He said, I think you've fallen into the trap, and I think I represent 99% of the internet when I say you've played the game of proximity. I'm not questioning your motivation. I'm questioning Trump's. Okay. To that, you say what?
As opposed to what? First of all, I love 99% of the internet. Exactly. That's where he lives, on the internet. A bunch of squabbling real housewives, I guess, of the world, just yelling at each other and wanting to live in the algorithm of hate. That's what we were trying to get away from here. So I guess my question to those people, and by the way, I had my people go through the numbers. It's really only the 10% of the far, far left who hated me before this. So it hasn't increased, those same people. And I would say to them, as opposed to what? I have the opportunity to go to the White House and talk to the president and not give up my principles. It seems like nobody noticed that. I didn't go MAGA. I had the opportunity to talk to Donald Trump and say things to him that maybe he never hears. Literally to speak truth to power. I shouldn't take that opportunity? Again, don't do that? Okay. And then there was the part about, you know, should I lie about how I found him? Because apparently that didn't please people. They wanted to hear that he was the same monster that they see in public, and he wasn't. Again, these are the people who love truth. We're losing truth. I agree. I've said it myself. Been one of the leading voices on that. What's true anymore? We don't know. We want the truth. We're thirsty for truth. I told you the truth. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a liar. That's the way he was in private. I said it, and I'll say it again. That's what I saw. I was just reporting what I saw. And by the way, I don't need to be lectured on who Donald Trump is. I was one of the first people to call it out before anybody did. And he sued me in 2013
I
about
was
the
just
orangutan thing,
right.
and we
I was
talked about that, by the
I was
way.
just gonna
That's
say
another thing. It's so interesting. Excuse me, can I finish my point? You asked a question. Um, so it's so
that was me
interesting that
not asking the question. That was Harvey asking the question. I was just interrupting you.
okay. Because what people do is they do interrupt, and then you don't say the whole thing, and then they don't really repeat the whole thing, so it gets to be half done. So I'm trying to avoid that. Um, but there's so much talk about, he's surrounded by ass kissers, which is true. I've said it myself. The editorial I did the Friday before I went to the White House on Monday was about that, was about we're becoming North Korea. And he's just surrounded by, by people who will kiss his ass and are MAGA. And he mentioned it to me when I was there. He said, I thought maybe you'd be nice, but you hit me hard. Yeah, I hit him hard. I'm not pulling punches, either on my show or when I was with him or after. And I'm proud that I was able to go into the White House and say to the President of the United States, look him in the eye and say, you're scaring people. It doesn't bother you that you're scaring so many of your own citizens? I'm proud that I confronted him when we talked about the orangutan thing, and I didn't apologize. I said, yeah, because I did that because you were making fun and mocking Obama's birth origins. And I thought that was low. So I should be a hero for going there and doing those things and saying those things to the president. I'm not the villain here. I mean, there's two ways you can do the Oval Office. The way I did it, honestly, or like Gretchen Whitmer and hold up a bunch of binders in front of your face.
Right.
Well, so Bill, that when I so rudely interrupted you, I was going to say what people forget is, I guess, because it's 10 years ago and we only have a 90-day collective memory, but you were engaged in litigation with him over that orange orangutan. They forget about that. And what the point I was going to make also is I'm sitting here in the LA Magazine studios. You were on the cover a year ago this month of LA Magazine, and you were lionized for that. And a year later, as you, whatever you want to call them, I call them kind of the loony left, that 10% just can't handle, they can't get their head around it. And it's astonishing to me that they kind of
No,
brought this upon themselves in a way.
no. And as I say, I should be a hero for being one of the people who got inside the inner sanctum and was able to say to this person who knows how much he ever hears anything that's not coming from the cult, and say those things and stick to my guns. And by the way, another thing that kind of pisses me off, the thing I did on telling the story of it was really fucking funny.
Yeah.
It was a very entertaining 12 minutes.
It was
kind of gets lost in the politics.
I
No,
agree.
it was
Wasn't
funny.
it, Harvey?
It was really funny. And I disagree with you on something, but it's not about going there at all. It's not that. The thing that I took issue with was when you said the real Donald Trump was the guy you had dinner with. And the other
I
guy,
didn't say those words.
but that was the essence of it. That was the essence of it.
I said I just said he's different. I just said I can quote myself because I spent all week writing it and I know it by heart. And I took contemporaneous notes like James Comey, like after the dinner. Exactly. I was James Comey taking contemporaneous notes. So I tried to remember exactly as much as I could and the quotes. And what I said in the piece was, he's a lot more self-aware than he is in public. Again, do you want a lie? Should I be a liar for you? I know that would make the 10% feel better. Or should I just tell you what I saw? How could I not say that? I got him to say, I didn't get him to say, he said, I lost the election. I remember it's in the piece. I say, wow, I never thought I'd hear you say that. And it was just like, I can't tell you anything. You should be, I guess, a little happy about the fact that there is at least a different guy other than the person who's doing so many horrible things, which I also mentioned in the piece, all the things that I hate and I'm going to continue criticizing, the
but that's
disappearing people and the gutting the government and all the tariffs, all of this stuff. I'm not, the jokes are just as much obscures as they ever were with him. I did one last week about he signed a thing to bring back coal, not for energy, just for blackface. Okay, you know, like I have not put one quiver away.
I know that, and I'm not being particularly articulate here, trying to explain what I'm saying. I knew him for decades, and had a lot of interactions with him, and what I saw was, yes, I saw the same person that you saw, that he can be charming, he can be funny, he can even be self-effacing. But to me, that doesn't mean that is the authentic Donald Trump. That is a skill that he developed in real estate, in entertainment, in New York high society, that he can be that way. But that doesn't mean that's who he is. It's a skill he developed.
Yeah, but also, Harvey, we had
No.
this argument this morning, and Bill, I'd love for you to talk about this or tell me how you react. I have said for years now that Trump has got a shtick. He does a stand-up act at these rallies. I mean, he's the Henny Youngman or Rodney Dangerfield of politics in some ways. And that's a shtick as much as what Harvey talks about is basically a shtick. And I don't know that you can say one is more authentic than the other.
It's part and parcel of who he is. In other words, he's not just that self-effacing person, and he's not just that guy who seems to want to be an authoritarian leader. That it's all wrapped in one is what I'm saying.
And may I?
Please.
Okay. You're only talking about half of it. You're talking about sort of the personality half of it. You're right. He can be in private. And by the way, I'm hardly the first person to report that aspect of it, that when he's not on stage, when he's not doing the thing, he's just much more soft-spoken and charming. You know, people say a lot of lefties. I think Keith Olbermann said that about him. I think they live in the same building. I mean, you can't get more left than that. Everybody says it about. I'm talking about a different dimension. That's one thing, yes, and maybe that is an act, but no, I think that's more like what he really is, hanging around the house. We're all different hanging around the house. And also, he's like on top of the world. Why would he need to be blustery at every minute? It must be fucking exhausting. So I think he was happy to have a guy's dinner with someone who was, you know, it might be actually a relief not to have all the ass kissers around all the time. Somebody who was making him laugh, joking with him, but, you know, needling him a little bit. And I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know if anybody else would have the same reaction. I'm just telling you what I saw. But the dimension I'm talking about, Harvey, is not just the personality, charming dimension. It's no, he actually understands more than I thought he did. He does understand, I think, that he lost the 2020 election. It's just that the public guy can't admit that because that doesn't work with the base. But to me, it was a revelation that he could take in things, and yes, he did take them in, and not go crazy about them, and I felt like at least he heard it, you know, at least he heard it. I don't think, like a lot of important people, he's against information. Now, what he does with it is, in my view, it has been for a long time and remains even more in this administration, insane. A lot of the things he's doing are just crazy. I mean, threatening to send just homegrown Americans to foreign prisons is just beyond outrageous. And
extorting law firms.
There's never any bottom of this barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all of it. The cutting off of the aid to the, you know, people who are starving and dying of diseases around the world for no reason. All of this stuff. I said in the piece, I didn't think this would change anything. Dinner with a comedian has nothing to do with what the person is on the world stage. But, you know, I went into the mine, and this is what I saw when I got down there. And I'm not going to lie about it.
Can I tell you a story? Can I tell you a story that I've never talked about this? The last time I talked to him was in 2017. I believe it was September. And I had not spoken to him in many months because I thought this was going to be a one-term president, and I thought he was, my read was really off, that I thought this guy was a libertarian and that he just won an election and he'd be one and done. And then all of a sudden he's going to run a second term, he said, almost out of the gate, and was doing things that just shocked me. So I had no contact until September. And he called me because I had a series on Fox called Objectified, and he had done the original show with me. So he called me to say, oh, isn't it great? I got great ratings for you, and now you have a show. And he could tell I didn't sound particularly happy to talk to him. And he said, what's the matter with you? And I said, I'm furious at you. And he said, why? And I said, how dare you talk about Colin Kaepernick and say they should fire all those sons of bitches just because he knelt? And he said, well, it's wrong. And I said, do you remember? I remember this. And I said, do you remember how people protested the Vietnam War? And he didn't. And I said, they burned flags. And he said, well, that's wrong. And he said, well, and I said, it worked. And I just went in, and I thought he was going to say, fuck you, and hang up the phone. And we talked for about 20 minutes. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me, and it just reminded me of your conversation, Bill. He said to me, nobody says no to me. Nobody argues with me. And he said, I appreciate this. And, I took this in, and he said, call me once a month and tell me what you think. And I was so shocked by it. I thought, did I possibly get through to this guy? 10 minutes later, he doubled down in the tweet about firing the sons of bitches. And I just felt like the sincerity part felt like an act to me. And I thought, that's it. And I've never spoken or interacted with him since. But I thought that I got through, and I clearly didn't.
Well,
but he really knew how to play me.
No, that's not necessarily how I would read that. Just because he didn't go with what you suggested doesn't mean he didn't hear it.
It was 10 minutes.
It was one time. You're 0 for 1. Now, do I have great hopes that saying anything to him is going to change anything? No, but you have to try. What, again, as opposed to what? Not engaging? For the Democrats, you lost everything. You have no power. You have nothing. And we're slowly becoming just much more of a monarchy, but you don't want to talk to the king at all? You don't want to talk to him? That's going to fix anything? I'll tell you a little story, not really a story, but a remembrance that Obama once did Jerry Seinfeld's coffee car show.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they had to change the format a little and go to the White House and so forth, and the president can't really drive. But Jerry asked him a great question. He said, what sport is politics like? And Obama said football, because most of it is just an ugly stalemate at the line, just smashing into each other, not moving much. But once in a while, a hole opens up and you can go through. And that is football. You open up, any running back will tell you, half a second, if the hole opens up, you got to run through it. And that's what politics is. I think Obama's exactly right. And in these polarized times, it's even harder to open up a hole. So maybe it's a chaotic dream, but I'm going to keep trying to find a hole, no matter where it might be. And the 10%, I assume, will just keep being assholes.
Yeah, they can't help
looking for the hole.
That's a hole.
Because there's no alternative but engagement. The alternative is Gretchen Whitmer. Which
was ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Right, which to me is the other way you can handle it. Anyway, I thought we were going to talk about the Menendez brothers, so I'm just completely...
Do you want them out?
I'm
actually curious. Do you think they should get out?
Oh, yeah. Come on. It's been a long time.
Thank you, Bill. I'll pass that along. By the way, I tell the story. Adam Carolla has the one who he's got twins who are now 18, Sonny and Natalia. And Adam years ago would tell me the story that if Natalia went into Sonny's room on a Thursday and said, "Hey, Sonny, why don't we blow away mom and dad Sunday night on the couch?" And Sonny replied, "This Sunday or next Sunday," that he'd know that he had done something wrong. And so I kind of say when there's this idea that we're assessing dangerousness, it seems a little kind of exalting form over substance to me. They ought to be out. It's ridiculous. I mean,
Well,
my big problem with it is the fact that there is no living victim who wants them in anymore. And whatever happened to victims' rights?
well, I think what informs this for me is age. And since we're all of a certain age on this show right now, I think we all know what I'm talking about. That you don't, until you get into your upper decades, you can't have any idea how different you are from when you were at the age where you blew your parents' heads off. I mean, we all do it. We all blow our parents' heads off when we're in our 20s. But by the time you get into your 50s and 60s, you're just going to be like, who was that person in my body? And you're such a different person. And I sure don't think they're going to do it again.
You know, it's so funny you say that because if my old man who was a prosecutor here in LA County it used to drive him crazy. He used to say, if you want to solve crime, you're crazy about crime, then just imprison every kid, male, between the ages of 16 and 25. There'll be no more crime. That's the end of crime. But God forbid that you say something like that.
Yes, you shouldn't.
Right? Can I, speaking of law, Bill, the thing that is just enraging me is these pussy law firms that have folded like cheap suits to Donald Trump, because that's extortion. And they didn't blink before they said yes, with the exception of a couple of firms. I'm stunned that this happened. I'm stunned. And it's why I love what Harvard did, because at least they had balls.
Yeah, they have balls and a $50 billion endowment.
Still affected them. It still affects them. I know they have a lot of money, but the $2 billion did go to research, and it's not going to devastate them, but it affected them.
They couldn't take the $2 billion for research out of the $50 billion endowment. That's sacred money that we can't possibly touch.
Kind of
what
makes
if we
sense.
dip below $50 billion? That's going to happen.
Okay,
I
but
mean,
what about the
please.
law firms? I mean, it's just shocking to me.
I mean, it's pathetic what the paucity of the levers of power anyone has to use against this president at this moment. We've never had this situation before in this country. And see, another reason why I think it was very good what I did, because first of all, I mean, I heard from so many people, and not just conservatives, mostly liberal people, very positive. People don't want just to keep, the people understand you just can't not engage, and we just can't go on with this level of hate, or it's going to be a civil war. So, you know, the fact that you could talk to the president just meant a lot to people. And that's where I think the future is.
Look, I don't disagree at all. I think just because what you call or I call the loony left has maybe louder. I think when you talk to most people, they understand it and they get it. And by the way, the loony left is what brought us here. They're the ones who kind of cheered on these bullshit cases, criminal cases that they brought. They're the ones who, back in the 90s were complaining bitterly when the Republicans were coming after Bill Clinton during Whitewater. Yet when the shoe was on the other foot, they were just as crazy. They didn't have Ken Starr. They just substituted Jack Smith, or they substituted Tish James or Fonnie Willis. And by the way, the same kinds of things that happened to Ken Starr, the same kinds of things that are happening as of yesterday to Tish James, in this kind of criminalizing politics and jamming and lawfare, as he just, that's the kinds of things that drive people,
Right.
the 80% or the 90% crazy. That isn't what they want.
Mark, you know what I always say to those 10 percenters? We voted for the same person in the last election. You're just why she lost. You know, let's let's not forget that we're in this situation where we are, basically back to the monarchy because the Republican Party, you can't count on them to ever stand up to him for anything. And that meant the Democrats really couldn't lose at all, and they did. They lost the Supreme Court, they lost both houses of Congress, and that's because they stuck with their boutique issues. They made the American people think every little thing was more important than like the meat and potato stuff. And they maintained that Joe Biden was a virile young man and a fine triathlete who could run for president again. So that's why we're in the mess that we're in.
We had David Hogue on TMZ Live today, who is the vice chair of the
I know him.
DNC. You've had him on your show, and he was great.
Yeah.
He was great on your show.
He's the guy from the gun shooting.
From Parkland, yeah.
Parkland, yeah.
And he was great on your show. So he is starting this initiative within that party, within the Democratic Party, that is causing a real stir, and it's a divide, that he wants to primary Democrats in safe districts. And he wants to primary them because they're stale in terms of their views. They've been there too long. And some of them, and he says it's relevant, are too old, and they need to bring younger people into Congress. And he has $20 million that he wants to spend to primary Democrats. And when I heard him say that, I thought, I got to ask you about that.
Well, it all depends on which kind of Democrats he's primarying. The problem with
old ones.
Well, the problem with bringing in young ones is the young ones tend to be more stupid woke. And I use the word stupid woke deliberately because that's what there's liberal and then there's stupid woke, and that's what loses elections. So look, I'm not going to prejudge anyone of any age. There's plenty of people in their 20s who are very sane. So, that's a great combination. Bring in younger people, but not stupid woke. Don't bring in the ones who are going to, be all for the things that 80% of the country is against, as Democrats seem to be wont to do. Smart people, yes, we're all for that. And are there too many politicians who are too old? There is, but it really is a case-by-case basis. And I like him too. I think he's got the right intentions, but there's no, at a certain point, substitution for a certain amount of experience. I don't know. He's not even 30. And again, I know what I was like in my 20s. So I'm sure he's more mature and smarter than me. But, we're men, we're in our 20s. Our brains are not quite developed yet. He's a very smart guy. But you just, every day they say you learn something new. Well, okay, then if you've lived 10,000 or how many more days than someone else, you do know a little bit more, and you might need that. So, but I'm glad he's out there. He's a smart guy with a lot of, you can't make up for that great energy you have in your 20s. He can stay up all night, use the Ritalin and the whatever the kids are hopped up on to let them focus. That's what I say. Get them on more of that.
My office is dying to know which side you're on. Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni. Oh, I'm serious. Oh, no.
Oh.
This is a big deal, dude.
Oh, sweetheart, I see it on your show every night. Okay. And by the way, I'm going. Everything I know about it is from your show. So that's what I'm going by. Going by your show, I'd have to say it looks to me like she's a little bit of a complainer about nothing. And he looks like he didn't do much in an age when you can get accused of stuff, and it's just right away it seems to stick. People seem to want to believe men are always monsters. It didn't look to me like he was trying to be a monster. I mean, I saw one night you were talking about something with he said something about, I don't know, it was something, there was some boob reference, but it wasn't sexual. It was something about your baby or your kids or
It was the
he was,
it was a breastfeeding thing, I think.
yeah, breastfeeding. I mean, it was like it's like those kind of people, the people I really don't like on the far left who just want to always get a scalp on the wall. And I always picture them just they see something like that and they're like, is this something? Can we get, is this anything? And then, if the internet responds, oh, good. And if okay, well, we'll pick up something else. Is this something? And I feel like that's what's going on here. She's trying to get something going with something. And I don't know what went behind the scenes with, because she's married to an actor and then his wife is on the set with this other guy. It's very Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken, isn't
Wow,
it?
that's
Well, that
so
didn't
true.
that
I
didn't
hadn't
end
thought
well.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that did
That
not
did
end
not
well
end
at
well.
all.
Sorry. Okay, listen, we cannot thank you enough for this. We so appreciate having you on, and I know everybody wants to hear from you on this. If he calls you back,
Well,
are you going to establish a relationship with him?
I'm much more concerned about my relationship with you.
We're fine.
I know, but did I move the needle at all with you?
You moved it a little bit.
Great.
I will attest
moved
to
it a
that
little bit.
because I had the conversation this morning, Bill, and he was a lot more hostile. I think
I wasn't
you've warmed
hostile.
him
I
up.
wasn't
You
hostile.
were hostile.
No,
You were
it wasn't
angry.
hostile. I guess my issue is that it's sort of a gestalt. It's everything is wrapped into one thing. The charm, the authoritarianism, it's who he is. It's not separate. It's not one is real and one is fake. It's all part and parcel of the same thing. I don't think we necessarily see it exactly, but I do get your point. And I think one of the things that gave me great pause that I thought, Bill's got a point here, is when I saw that Gretchen Whitmer picture. I just looked at that and I thought, this is ridiculous that we're at this point. This is ridiculous.
Bill should send her roses because it really brought home
It did
the
with
point
me.
of what you
It did
were
with
saying.
me. It really did.
It really did.
It just, how could she,
Well,
what is she thinking?
okay, but just to wrap it up with my original question, as opposed to what? Say you went to the White House and you spent 2.5 hours there, and then you wouldn't have told exactly how you saw it, and would you have spoken to him your truth? Would you spoken truth to power? I mean,
I have with him. I have with him.
Okay, but these are the things I did, and I don't know why. I just don't know what the alternative is to engaging.
I think you're right. My only issue was that my impression of what I think you should. I mean, it would be awful if you wouldn't tell the way you really saw it, because that's what you do. That's what you do for a living. And people expect,
go there.
And people expect that.
Or go there, exactly.
Or go there.
By
Or
the
go
way,
there. I mean,
I agree. I agree.
The reason why the Gretchen Whitmer thing is so crazy is because what it says is, I shouldn't be here. And I'm like, that's exactly where you should be.
I agree with you on this. I never just,
right.
I always thought, hey, if you go there, great. I didn't think that you were going to move the needle with him, but my issue was, I don't think that there's one authentic person and one actor.
I was just going to say, your objection, Harvey, at least this morning, was the description of him, not the fact that Bill was talking to him or that Bill was saying something, but what he saw and reporting back.
I've seen what Bill saw. No, I saw the exact person Bill Maher talked about. I have been around him when he's been charming, when he's been self-effacing, when he's laughed and all that. What I'm saying is that doesn't necessarily mean that is the authentic person and that the other is the actor.
Saying, let's try to coax that guy out of the White House. All right, I got to go do my own podcast.
Okay,
now.
Hey, Bill, we can't thank you enough.
All right,
thanks,
pleasure. Great
thank you, my
see
friend.
You guys.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Mark, I'm so happy Bill came on. I am so happy Bill came on.
And it was inspired by you to bring him on. every time I turn on something or I look at something, it's all anybody's talking about
Yeah,
right now.
no, it's a big
I
deal.
watched a spirited Gutfeld roundtable about it, and it's interesting, and it's almost a Rorschach test as to where you are, just your reaction to it, and so. It was a great thought, Harvey. Hat tip to you on this.
Okay, so you're in court tomorrow.
I'm in
Maybe
court.
maybe
I'll
we will
see you
talk on
tomorrow.
Friday and kind of download on what happened with Menendez. You're going to ask, by the way, you're going to ask not just that they be resentenced, because that's kind of irrelevant at this point since the parole board already has it. What do you think that realistic chances are that you could get this judge to change the conviction to manslaughter? Because that's just.
I think that's what, if you read the section that we're going under, 1172, remember, we did that whole hearing last week, was it under one section or is it under another section? He says we're going under this 1172. Talk to anybody who's familiar with the section, because I've talked to everybody that I can find who's familiar with it. The whole idea of this section is, have they rehabilitated? Are they likely to reoffend? I don't think there's anybody who thinks they're, as we talked with Bill, likely to reoffend. If that's the case, they should be out. How do you get them out? You reduce it to a manslaughter and give them time served.
But what if that is a ballsy thing for an elected judge to do, where they will incur the wrath of a lot of people in LA County who are going to end up voting for this judge. I don't know that judges have the stomach, because
I don't know. This is where, by the way, I think I've talked off camera with you. You have Charles, who I love dearly, who talks about it's 50-50. Why would Gavin get involved?
That's
You're
what the polls are
first
showing.
to say, you're the first to say that's not a scientific poll. I've seen other polling, legitimate polling, meaning not that yours is not legitimate, but it's not a scientific poll. It's one of the polls where just vote if you watch. Scientific polling says it's more like 2/3 who think they should be out. And by the way, I don't think for a second, I've known this judge for since he was a baby DA. And I will tell you, this is not some soft touch. This is somebody who deeply cares about doing the right thing, following the law. And and that's why I keep hearkening back to the law. If you follow the law, what it tells you to do is, if they're not likely to reoffend, and not just a technical violation, not a rules violation, if they're not likely to commit what's called a super strike, one of the 7 deadly sins, then if that's the case, then they should be out, and you reverse engineer how they get out. The reverse engineering is give them a manslaughter, give them time served, and they should come home for Easter dinner.
I don't get it, because that's what the parole board does. Why do you have to reverse engineer? You give it to the parole board because that's what they always decide, which is whether they're rehabilitated and pose a danger. But to change the sentence and reverse engineer and call it manslaughter when a jury said it was murder, that's a big step.
I agree it's a big step, but it's the law. That's what take a look at the section. Take a look at what the section says. Go down to the factors, the youth, the fact that they had trauma. I mean, every single factor they tick off on. So it's the way the law was designed. And frankly, what we were arguing last Friday is, this is a law that is in response to this kind of crazy 90s lock them all up, warehouse them all idea that we had that surely did not work. And now we need a safety valve of some kind, because we've got this aging population. To what Bill and you and I were talking about, you're a different person in your 50s and 60s than you are in your teens and your 20s. And if you want to reduce crime, to quote my father again, lock up every male between the ages of 16 and 25, crime will plummet.
Okay. With that, maybe we'll talk Friday about Menendez. We will. By the way,
I hope so.
I mean, if they get out, do they literally open the prison door and say, "See ya"?
Yeah, exactly. Come over and we'll go on an Easter egg hunt.
Can I piss in your bushes first?
Oh my God. I'm going to warn them where you were.
Okay, we will talk. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye-bye.